Welcome to Quarantine History of Otter County. I'm your host, Chris Schuelke of the Otter County Historical Society. So on the last episode, I talked about the origins of historic preservation in America and the enactment of the National Historic Preservation Act in 1966. The most important product of that legislation was the National Register of Historic Places. This is the nation's official list of buildings, sites, structures, and objects deemed worthy of preservation. Otter County has 25 National Register sites representing a wide variety of buildings and sites that depict the history and development of Otter County. One thing I would like to emphasize is that not all National Register properties are high-style architectural masterpieces. Some are modest, yet historically they are significant. Take, for example, the tiny village of Elizabeth. The Elizabeth City Hall and Jail, located behind me, is a two-story brick building constructed in 1898. The facade is divided into 3 narrow bays by 4 raised brick columns. On the ground floor, these bays had an engine door to the fire hall, a central window, and a window and doorway entrance to the building. If you look up, you can see a brick coursework with raised dentils extending across the top of the bay openings. And shortly after its opening in 1898, a 1-story attached jail was added. The Elizabeth City Hall and Jail is a fine example of municipal improvements reflecting the civic pride of its residents. Before construction, the Fergus Falls Weekly Journal reported that the village of Elizabeth had a special election and by unanimous vote decided to erect a town hall. The citizens of Elizabeth believe in public improvements. The 1898 City Hall replaced a small frame building and reflected a substantial investment for the small community. It was listed on the National Register in 1984. Well, join me next as we head 14 miles north to Pelican Rapids as we view another National Register property. In 1868, Asa Jacobs and Robert Scambler, while working to locate and establish trading posts for the British Northwest Trading Company, came upon a section of rapids along the Pelican River. Realizing the rapids could be harnessed for water power, the two men sent word to St. Cloud and St. Paul that the Pelican Valley was a wonderful location for settlement. After John M. Johnson filed the first claim, the surrounding land was quickly taken by homesteaders. Canadian-born Harrison Harris constructed the first home, and in 1871, Norwegian immigrant O.A.E. Blyberg opened the first store and post office. Blyberg's entrepreneurial activities extended to opening a drugstore as well as land speculation and development. His 3 plat additions to Pelican Rapids added greatly to the area of the city and included a major portion of the commercial district. Blyberg's early success is reflected in the home he constructed in 1884. The Blyberg House is arguably the most important residence in Pelican Rapids. From the early period of the city's development, no other house is as well built, designed, or preserved. The house reflects the success and importance of the original owner. Italianate in style, it was constructed of locally produced cream-colored brick. While major additions were made in 1901 and 1902, they merely extend existing architectural patterns. The OAE Bleiberg House was listed on the National Register in 1984. Now we will go down into the historic commercial district of Pelican Rapids to look at another civic building. Much as the Elizabeth City Hall epitomizes early civic pride and the desire for community improvement, Pelican Rapids did the same when they constructed a new city building in 1899. Built as the town's city hall, it also served as the police station and fire department. The Pelican Rapids City Hall features raised brick corners, curved window surrounds topped by keystones, a cupola, and decorative brick patterns in the cornice. The building has been well preserved and retains much of its historical integrity. Now join me as we head back to Fergus Falls as we close out today's program with one of Minnesota's most impressive historic buildings. During the summer of 1885, a state legislative commission visited Fergus Falls with the task of selecting a site for a new state asylum. After a thorough inspection of the community, Fergus Falls was awarded Minnesota's third state hospital. The December 16, 1885 Fergus Falls Weekly Journal proudly proclaimed Fergus Falls was far ahead of all other competitors, and it filled the bill in every particular way. Warren B. Donnell drew up plans based upon the moral management concepts of Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride. An influential figure in improving the mental health landscape, Kirkbride called for more humane treatment of patients centered on improved medical care. He felt the mentally ill suffered from illnesses that could be treated and even cured. Putting theory into practice, Kirkbride developed a moral management plan including new architectural concepts. He called for a central administration area flanked by patient wings with setbacks to allow for maximum light and ventilation. Construction of the Fergus Falls State Hospital began in the spring of 1888, and West Detached was completed in July 1890. Subsequent construction proceeded from west to east throughout the 1890s, and when the wings were linked together by gracefully curved, fully enclosed two-story connecting corridors, Kirkbride's linear plan was complete. Construction of the main complex took a dozen years, and Fergus Falls State Hospital was intended to serve as a model institution, being the most complete and modern institution available. The hospital operated 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for over 117 years. Finally, in 2007, the state of Minnesota shut it down and sold the complex to the city of Fergus Falls. For the past 13 years, the idea has been to preserve or demolish the state hospital complex. It has been an all-encompassing issue for the community of Fergus Falls. Generally speaking, there are those who believe the entire building should be demolished to protect local taxpayers. And there are those who call for partial demolition that generally means keeping the tower section and tearing down the rest. And there are those who advocate for the preservation and reuse of the entire complex. And yet here we are with an empty historic asylum. Is there hope that it can be saved? Well, let me conclude by quoting Raymond Minervini, who took a dilapidated Kirkbride Asylum in Traverse City, Michigan, and has slowly turned that into the jewel for that community. He said, "I encourage you, the community of Fergus Falls, to seize the opportunity to invest in what makes you special, rather than pay many times over to destroy it. Blow out the match. Other communities have done it, and so can you. Ultimately, embracing your past may be the only way for Fergus Falls to have a vibrant and sustainable future." Well, thank you very much for joining me on Quarantine History of Otter Tail County. This is Chris Schuelke. Stay safe, everyone.